welcome back to the Savage NASCAR Podcast. It's been a little bit, but we are now on episode 11, and today I'm joined by Mike Schiavo. How's it going, fam?
Going well, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be on here.
There's multiple topics we'll be getting into, but first I have to ask the question I ask everyone that comes on the show, and that is, how or where did you find your fascination or interest in the sport of NASCAR?
Well, I was a little boy and I really liked cars, and one of the particular cars I would buy from Target every time I would go there was NASCAR cars. Now, I don't remember what brand the cars were, but I just remember, they sold Jimmy Johnson, Jeff Gordon, Dale Earnhardt Jr. cars, and I remember I would go to Target every week and I would go right to the cars section and just, buy a car from that. Other options were the movie Cars, with the talking cars from Pixar, and a game called NASCAR Kart Racing for the Wii, which if you guys have not played that, I definitely recommend you playing it. But one night I was scrolling through TV with my mom and we stumbled upon the 2012 Daytona 500, and after watching that race, I thought it was just so cool, and I just decided I was going to be a fan of NASCAR.
I actually used to get cars from Target as well, but mainly Walmart. Now, most people watching this probably know that you're a huge Joey Logano fan. How did you become a fan of him?
So going back to the game NASCAR Kart Racing, I remember I unlocked him in a cheat code, and he was sponsored by GameStop, and quite honestly, since I was like 6 or 7, I can't remember how old I was, I thought that he was fake because he was in the section of fake drivers, and I wasn't too sure how he was real. And going back to that same race, the 2012 Daytona 500, ironically, he was leading the race. So I was just like, oh wow, this Joey Logano guy is real. Maybe I should start rooting for him. And I've learned more and more about him throughout the years and just being a fan of him. And I've just gotten so invested in his driving, and I love his charity work. And I just think that he's an awesome guy in general.
Interesting. I remember playing the NASCAR kart game when I was younger as well, and I was wondering why Joey was in the fictional driver section. Another question I'd like to ask the guests on my show is, what are your favorite active and non-active tracks?
This is a good question. I think for my favorite active tracks, my top 3 would have to be number 1, Talladega. I love the action and the speed, and it always just puts you on the edge of your seat. Number 2, Bristol. You got to support the last great Coliseum. Always brings great racing regardless of the package. And I love that stadium look to it. And number 3, Martinsville. That's just such a good track as well. I love all the beating and banging and how the cars just look like they just came out of a demolition derby, and it's truly awesome to watch like we saw last week. Non-active tracks, this is a little tough. The old Richmond looked really nice from when I was researching old NASCAR races, and also North Wilkesboro looked like a lot of fun to drive at, and maybe one day they can get it fixed up and we can see a race there one day, but I doubt that will ever happen, but who knows.
Facts. Now, you created the NAS Boys podcast, which I'm a part of, and we'll get more into that in a little bit, but when did you start social media and why?
I started Instagram in 2017, and I really just wanted to have it because a lot of people my age had it, and I was just like, why not sign up for this? And I remember I signed up for it, but I didn't know what I was going to post. And then luckily I managed to find communities like music accounts, for example. And for the first 2-3 years of my account, I posted music memes, which I still do to this day.
Awesome. Could you tell us some about your favorite music and bands?
I like all different types of genres. My favorite band is Fall Out Boy, and my favorite rapper, solo artist, whatever you want to call it, is Eminem. My top 3 favorite bands are Fall Out Boy, 21 Pilots, and My Chemical Romance. And my top 3 rappers are Eminem, Juice World, and XXX Tentacion.
Cool. I like those genres as well, and you pronounce XX Tentacion so precisely.
Yeah, a lot of people like to screw that up, but I just heard him saying it in an interview and I just picked it up. And a couple of years ago, I found the NASCAR community and I was shocked at how big the community was. And, I just started joining diecast series and talking to people about NASCAR. And that was just so much fun for me to do. And then now I've started adding more NASCAR related content to my account.
Now, you mentioned the diecast community. How did you find your interest in it and in diecast racing?
I was just going through suggested accounts for me, and I saw a NASCAR account. I believe it was Benson's Racing Reviews or something like that. And I just gave him a follow because I wanted to get more involved in the NASCAR side of Instagram. And then I met my friend Jimmy _ Jam 48, aka Spencer. And I joined his series, and then I joined Napa Cup Series, and then it just spiraled into a bunch of different series, and I've made a lot of amazing friends along the way, like yourself, Christian.
Awesome, and thanks, man. For those that don't know, that's how me and Mike met, was in a diecast series. Now, the next question I'll ask is one that I've asked a couple other guests on the show. What is your opinions on the NASCAR and diecast community?
I think that it's an interesting community. You have your interesting, cool, normal people. You got, your meme accounts. There's a lot of toxicity in this community, whether it's like hating on drivers or, just like people being a-holes in general. And that part's frustrating, but I think I've enjoyed my time in the community for the most part.
I agree. It can be toxic at times, unfortunately. We both seen the good and the bad. Have you considered starting your own diecast league?
Well, yes, but no. So when I was younger, I would like play with my cars and I would get inspiration from Aflac Cup Series and Double E Dud when they did diecast series. And I wanted to start one, but I never did because for starters, like I don't know how to make a track for starters, and I did not have enough space. And now that I'm in like a smaller living space, I don't have space. And just being in diecast series, like some people get really like rowdy, competitive. There's a lot of drama, and I just don't want to have to deal with that. So my alternative is to make fantasy leagues for like NASCAR, basketball, football, stuff like that. And the people there who join are actually like chill. They don't act toxic. I don't have to make one of my friends win and be called rigged and stuff like that. Everyone just competes and has such a fun time.
Understandable. Now, I've never really done a fantasy league. I usually do picks and predictions, however, and just like me, your favorite sport other than NASCAR is actually basketball. Tell us about how you became a basketball fan, and did you play it?
My dad is a huge basketball fan, and he showed me Kobe Bryant and bought me a Kobe jersey, and I was like, oh, that's cool. I like this guy. And one day he took me to a Washington Wizards game, and I was hooked watching basketball. I enjoyed it. He bought me another jersey, a John Wall jersey, and I remember he had a client from his work who had season tickets, and he hooked us up with tickets. And I remember watching the game, and we were sitting on the away team's bench, and I remember I was giving the opposing players high fives. I don't play basketball on a official team, but when it gets nice outside, I usually love to go and shoot around at the park.
Was this when Gilbert Arenas was on the Wizards, or when John Wall and Bradley Beal were first on the team?
This was when Bradley Beal first joined the Wizards as a rookie. The game was against the Detroit Pistons. Both teams sucked, I believe. There weren't really any like notable names. I think one of them was Rodney Stuckey. He gave me a towel, and other than that, like None of the players are really that relevant, to be honest.
I remember Rodney Stuckey, as Flight Reacts would say, the rest are nobodies.
Well, Christian, I would like to ask you, what was the first NBA game that you went to?
It was actually back in 2013. It was 2 days before Christmas. It was the Charlotte Bobcats versus the Milwaukee Bucks, and believe it or not, it was Giannis Antetokounmpo's rookie year. So I got to see him play a little bit. I never had heard of him before. Going into the game, and that game was actually a really good game. The Bobcats, I should say, they were not doing that good to start out the game, and they were almost down by 20 points. And the Bobcats had a pretty good season that year. They went to the playoffs, and the Bucks were not that good. But the Bobcats came back, and Chris Milton hit a three to send the game to overtime. And then in overtime, Chris Milton hit another three, which would have sent the game to 2 overtimes, but his foot was on the line, so they called it a 2, and the Bobcats won. I forgot what the score was, but I think it was like 105 to 103 or something. Now, back on the topic of NASCAR, what is your thoughts on the season so far?
I think the season has been very interesting so far. We've had a lot of interesting winners, such as Michael McDowell winning the Daytona 500, which obviously not that many people expected him to win. You had William Byron getting a win early in the season, which is also very shocking. You have Larson winning, which was not shocking, but the amount of time it took him to win was very impressive. But now we've had just normal winners like Logano and Truex, for example, and I feel like this season is starting to get on that path of where we're going to see, like the same dominant people winning. But I still am very excited for the season, and I can't wait to continue to report on it using our podcast as the platform.
For sure. Do you think that it'll be the best season ever, as Fox has been advertising?
Good question. I mean, we've seen a lot of interesting moments this season, but I don't really think it will be the best season ever. But we'll just have to wait and see.
I agree with you on that. Now, about the Nascar Podcast, how did you come up with the idea for it? And how did you get it started for the people listening that may not know?
Well, I really have enjoyed listening to other people talking about sports.
Same.
Such as like news reporters and, ESPN. And I really wanted to have people to talk about NASCAR with, since, in Maryland, there's not really that many people who like NASCAR except for, casuals who only know Dale Jr. and Kyle Busch. Once I got started in this community and I've made a good group of friends, I talked to one of my friends, Brandon, aka Spud.Shady, and I talked to him and I was like, hey man, do you want to start a podcast? And he was like, yeah, sure. So it was us two founding the podcast, and then we got another one of my friends, Spencer, who I mentioned earlier in the show, and Cam, and the four of us were coming up with ideas to talk about for the show, and we couldn't figure out the name we wanted for the show. So Spencer had said Nas Boys, and we all enjoyed it, but it was such a pain to figure out names, and I just started saying names because I'm sort of like the host of the show, and I just started saying the names that we came up with, and everybody agreed that Nas Boys had the best ring to it. So we just decided, hey, why not use Nas Boys? And, it's been a lot of fun, even though that we've had to change the hosts a couple of times because, life circumstances have affected them in some way, shape, or form. We've still had a good time talking about NASCAR and figuring out ideas for this show, and I hope that I can do this show for years to come.
Definitely, and it's been fun for sure. And if you haven't yet, go follow Mike and the Nas Boys podcast, which the links will be in the description below and on the screen. Now, let's talk about the upcoming weekend's races at Richmond. I'm looking forward to these races. I've always loved the track, even though some of the races there, as of late, have not been very exciting, I'd say. What is your thoughts on the track in general?
I've liked it better with, I think it's Gen 5 and early Gen 6. The track has been very boring as of late, as you just said. I don't like it really with the package, and in my opinion, Richmond is the worst short track on the schedule.
What?
But as always, I'm ready for some NASCAR racing, and hopefully this year's race will be much better.
Oh man, I don't know if I would say it's the worst short track on the schedule in my opinion, but we can agree to disagree. As you mentioned earlier in the episode, the old Richmond Fairgrounds track was definitely goated, and I enjoy watching the races at that configuration on YouTube. What is some of your favorite races or moments at the old and new Richmond track layouts?
I think my favorite moment per se would have to be when Dale Earnhardt dumped Darrell Waltrip, and then he was out of his car cleaning the windshield while he was still driving with his knee. That was really cool, and it just showed you what a hard worker Dale was. And my favorite race there would probably have to be in 2014, I believe, when Joey Logano won, and he made like a three-wide pass on Brad Keselowski and Matt Kenseth. I think Jeff Gordon was around there as well. And I think that might have also been the race where Tony Stewart and Kurt Busch argued. That was a pretty good race, I would say.
Both of those were definitely great moments. Some of mine are on my top 10 list for this weekend, which you can see on the Nascar Podcast. A couple other ones was the crazy 2011 fall race, which was basically a wreck fest. Greg Biffle going after Jay Sauter and Kevin Harvick calling off a young Kyle Busch in 2006. Now let's talk about the upcoming weekend's races, shall we?
Yep, I'm ready for this.
Alrighty, so with the truck race, who's your pick to win?
Well, I'm going to go for a pretty expected pick. Part of the reason is because I haven't really seen the trucks run at Richmond a whole lot, so I'm not too sure who's going to go and be good there, but I think I'm going to go with Kyle Busch because, he just wins a lot in the trucks. He's always up front, and he's good at Richmond, and I think that he's going to get it done this week.
The trucks haven't raced at Richmond in a good bit. Like, they raced there from 1995 to, if I'm correct, 2005, and then they just returned back this past year. So, for me, it's hard to pick this one as well. I would pick Kyle Busch, but I'm not going to pick him to win. I don't think he's going to sweep the weekend, but he's done it before, so I wouldn't be surprised. But my pick to win the truck race is Grant Enfinger. I think the truck race might actually be pretty good, and I hope there's going to be a lot of action, so yeah.
All right, now let's talk about Cup. Who's your pick to win this weekend?
I'm going to go with Kyle Busch. I don't think he's going to win the truck race, but I'm going to go with him winning the Cup because he's done so well at Richmond in his Cup career. He's won 6 races there, and I think that he'll be able to get it done with his experience. I wouldn't be surprised if Denny Hamlin wins it or Truex because both of them have done well there too, but I'm going to go with Kyle Busch. What about you?
Kyle Busch is definitely a great pick. I think that he's one of the best drivers at this track. But for me, I'm going to go with Martin Truex Jr. He almost won the race there last season until Brad Keselowski beat him out. Plus, Toyotas are usually solid at this track, so even if it's not MTJ, it won't surprise me if it's Hamlin or Busch.
True and interesting. Well, we've reached the end of the episode here today. Is there any closing remarks or anything else you want to share?
Thank you so much for having me on the show. I really appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode. Make sure you guys follow both our Instagrams and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And see you guys on my channel and my Instagram.
Fact Show, thanks for coming on, and thank y'all for watching. We hope y'all enjoy. Go follow Mike on Instagram and YouTube, and go follow my NASCAR account for more great content. And until next time, I'm out. Peace!